Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Revilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. It's the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something unexpected. You and I will meet self-starters and creators to learn about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Please support the show by subscribing, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it helps so much if you take a few seconds to rate and review my show. My guest today is an expert website investor, blogger, and entrepreneur whose passion is helping new aspiring entrepreneurs break free from the matrix and monotony of a 9-to-5 life. Pregnant with their first son in 2016, his wife sat him down and told him she was quitting her 40K a year day job so she could be a full-time mom. Starting with niche blogging, YouTube, and affiliate marketing, within 18 months, he was able to pay off their debts and give his wife the freedom to retire from her day job altogether. A self-proclaimed Seinfeld and The Office nerd, I'm so happy he's here to give us some insights as to how we can turn our passions into full-time income generators. Tailoring Talkers, please join me in welcoming Chris Myles to the Tailoring Talk Show. Chris, how are you?
Doing okay. Thanks so much for having me on. This is going to be exciting. I think we've kind of vibed already. So let's go ahead and jump into this and see what kind of value we can bring to your audience.
Chris, you are joining us all the way from sorry. So as a Brit, I would say Connecticut, but I know there are different ways of pronouncing it, but you don't do the hard in the middle. So Connecticut.
Yeah.
Connecticut.
Hey, we're lazy when it comes to English. I can admit that. So, but yeah, Connecticut is typically the way that you would hear it pronounced, but it pretty much is connect, I cut is how it's spelled. So it just depends on where you're from, but we pretty much know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Before we get into the main stuff that I want to drill your brains, sorry, that was violent. That was a Michael Scott moment, and that's what I want to talk about first. I am such a huge The US Office fan. I love the original. Have you seen the original British version?
Yeah, but Ricky Gervais. Yeah, that was it was. I remember watching both episodes kind of not in tandem, but at the same time, and you could see a lot of the inspiration they got from the first few episodes and everything, and how the US version kind of just took it and ran at that point. But no, I did see both versions of it. I mean, I'm stateside, so I kind of like that one version better. But regardless, it was nice to see the genesis of it and how it began. But yeah, I definitely have seen it.
So I bought the US version on DVD. There'll be some people listening to this that will be Googling DVD to try and work out what the hell that is.
Are DVDs that old already? Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I was talking to someone recently who was young and kind of had to raise an eyebrow when I said DVD. So yeah, we're
you want to have some fun? You want to have some fun, Roberto? Do this. Ask someone, if you were to answer the phone, how would you answer the phone? And if they go, this is great for a podcast, but if they do a little hang loose symbol with their hand and go like this, they're probably a millennial or older. But if they go like this, like a bar, just basically holding their palm up to their hand because of a flat smartphone, you could tell what generation people are from. It's really very unnerving.
Yeah, because in the split second you said that, I was doing this already. I was already forming.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's how most people do it, because that's the phones that we grew up with, right? But nowadays, my son, the only thing he's seen are these bar phones, basically, right? It's just a big flat device that you hold up to your ear. So they've never used a phone that had a microphone and a thing just like the little hang 10 symbol that we normally use.
That's amazing. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, during the pandemic, I was talking to clients who were locked up indoors, having to slave for their employers all day. And some of them had really small kids, that were either born or were just toddlers during the pandemic. And I remember one of my clients, and I said, how's little James coping? And he was like, he's kind of sad and he doesn't get to see his friends at nursery. But he said the interesting thing the other day is that he was sitting by the window and he was kind of doing this with his finger on the glass. And we were trying to work out what he was doing. And he was basically trying to interact with the window because he's used to his iPad, his tablet. and drawing on it and stuff, and he was trying to see if he could do it with a glass.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Isn't that
Wow.
mind blowing?
Yeah, talking about screen time and everything. That's something we're always like on with our son, because it's very interactive, right? You can do literally anything from our devices, and when you grow up with this stuff, we come from a generation. I'm not exactly sure your age, but it's we come from a generation where we were pre-internet, right? And now we grew up with the internet for the most part of our lives, so we kind of know both sides of it. But there's an entire generation of kids that obviously have no idea what the world was like before high-speed internet.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, I think I'm now doing these kind of time reference things where, I'm thinking, like Back to the Future is going to be 40 years old in a couple years time, right? And
God, that's one of my favorite movies, by the way.
Oh yeah, me too. And so now I put myself back in 1985, and we had, in 85, so I was about 7, 8 years old. And I remember the sticker albums that you used to have for the movies, right? So, it was around that time, Back to the Future, the He-Man Masters of the Universe movie that came out with Dolph Lundgren. Wow. So now you get my age, right? And but then I think to myself, okay, so 1985, let's go 40 years before that, right? So then you're going to 1945. So, I mean, I don't know what movie came out in 1945. Was Gone with the Wind was around that sort of time, 1947 or something?
Maybe like Casablanca,
right.
Maybe a little before that. Yeah, things like that.
So now imagine like 7, 8, 9-year-old us then, and mom wants to watch Gone with the Wind, and you're just like, I don't want to watch that like 4-hour, old ass movie. I mean, I don't want to sit in front of that. Honestly, I want to watch Back to the Future or Ghostbusters or Star Wars or something, right? So that must be what it's like for kids today, but even worse, because the pace of technology has got faster in the last 40-year gap than it did in that 40-year gap.
I heard something. No, it makes perfect sense, because I heard something very similar when it comes to music, right? So like the music that I like 90s music, right? But at this point, 90s music was 30 years ago, right? So me growing up in the 90s and enjoying that type of music, is great and all. But nowadays, what kind of music was 30 years old in the 90s for me? And that would have been music that was from the 60s, right? Ooh. So music that came out in the 60s, we're talking, Temptations, a lot of Motown stuff, like that stuff at the time was old then, right? But it was only about 30 years old at that point. So music today and what we like to listen to is like what Motown and everything was like for kids nowadays, for what we listened to back in the 90s. That's a mind-blowing stat right there. So I totally understand what you mean with the movies and everything.
Exactly. So coming off of that tangent, going back to where we originally were, so the US Office, I didn't so I bought it on DVD, season 1. I watched the first episode and I was like, this is just America trying to do the British one. And I didn't really connect with it at the time. And this was, years ago. I mean, this would be like 2008 or something, 2007.
Early 2000s. Yeah,
something like that. Mid to late 2000s. And so that DVD went away. That was that. And really, it was probably about 10 years ago that I went back to it and started to watch it. And now every single year, round about February-ish time or Easter time, I do a marathon of the US Office, all 9 seasons, back to back. I'll go through maybe 2 to 3 episodes a day. And I just love that show so much. It makes me laugh. It makes me cry. It makes me feel. You're so invested in the characters as well. I just think they did such an amazing job. And I just have a fondness and a love and appreciation for it as well. So yeah. Have you listened to the podcast that Jenna Fisher
with the girls?
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll listen into an episode.
Yeah,
it's amazing that they've, even all of these years later, they still have they can create a podcast that largely talks about that. and other topics, but largely talks about what happened when they were on the show, and still have a ton of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, but we've been talking about time references, and so you take a superstar like Billie Eilish. So when The Office goes out, season 1, she's practically a baby, right?
Yeah.
But she is a self-certified Office superfan.
Which shows you the rewatchability of it as well, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of do the same thing with episodes of Seinfeld. As technology gets better, some of the episodes do kind of fail because you're simply, well, why didn't they just text them? What texting wasn't a thing back then, right? They have an answering machine. They have whole episodes that talk about, trying to take the answering machine out of someone's apartment before they hear it. And just like, most people are going to be like, what's an answering machine? I'll be honest. One of my favorite TV shows growing up is the Dick Van Dyke Show. Right? It's an older show. It was out in the '60s before it was even color TV. But even to this day, a lot of those jokes still stand up today, and I think that's pretty awesome, and is a pretty good testament as to how good the writing was for shows like that back then.
Yeah, no, exactly. When you go back to older movies as well, classics, a lot of Steve Martin movies is the first example that springs to mind, but then some of those, like Back to the Future and so on. And I think they've aged pretty well. And that, again, is testament to the filmmaking, the writing, and so on.
The story.
So, yeah. We're not here to talk about all of that today, but I mean, you and I could go on together. You're just lucky that we're not face to face right now, because you wouldn't get away this afternoon. So it's really, really kind of serendipity or whatever that we're talking today, because literally, so just yesterday, my podcast hosting service provider, whatever you want to call it, Buzzsprout, they gave me all the stats for 2022, and it is amazing to see that this podcast is listened to in 52 different countries around the world, that my biggest audience is in the United Kingdom. So thank God, because, something would be seriously wrong if it was somewhere else. My second largest audience is in the United States. Then it crisscrosses backwards and forwards between Europe, Australia, and so on. And all of this was great. And I was saying to my wife, she was like, you've done really well. And she said, you kept going this far, and it's amazing that you keep showing up. And I said, I love it. I absolutely love it. And if I had a choice, gun to head, I love my day job. I love what I do. I love taking care of people. I love creating clothes for them. I love having an impact in their lives and impacting the way they feel about themselves. Mm-hmm. But given a choice, if someone said you can only do the podcasting or you can only do the tailoring, if I could make the income that I need to out of the podcasting and the content creation, I would 100% do that and drop the other thing. Like, I'd close my business in a heartbeat.
Nice.
For some reason, I feel more in control as a content creator and someone that gets to talk to amazing people like you every week than I do in my day job, because my day job is still, you're a freelancer. If nobody's giving you any work, you're not finding work, you're not earning any money. This just ticks so many boxes for me. And so at the moment, I guess it kind of is a side hustle. I don't really make anything out of it. The benefit that I get out of it is the value that I give to our listeners, and also the little bit of money that I make, which mainly goes towards hosting costs and everything else. But, if someday, if I could monetize it enough to be able to live off it, I would love to do it as a full-time job. So anyway, here's the very, very long question for you. This is something that you had to leverage when all of a sudden you were faced with that kind of, gun to the head moment of your wife. She's earning a decent salary. You get pregnant, first child. How many do you have now, by the way?
Still just the one, actually.
Still just the one.
Still just the one.
Aw. So, who would be 7 years old now?
6. He just turned 6.
Just turned 6. So, so all of a sudden you're like, holy moly, I got to do something here. Can you just go back 7 years and just kind of just kind of take me through sort of what happened there, how you kind of reacted when she broke the news. I mean, obviously, you'd be happy to find out that you were going to be a father. But then when the next bit of news came, which was that, I'm not going to pay for childcare, daddy, daycare and stuff. I want to do that myself. So that means you now have to shoulder responsibility of taking care of everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, man, when we first got started, it was just me and my wife. But it's like we had like okay jobs. Like her job wasn't amazing. My job wasn't amazing. They just got the bills paid. That's pretty much all it did. I like to call them JOBs, or just over broke type jobs, because we were just making enough to get by. And then, we were just trucking along. We got married in 2013 or so. And it was always one of my big things. Like I wanted to, just have some time, me and her, for a while before we started looking at having kids. So, it had been a few years, and we were just like, let's go ahead and start giving it a try. So, Benji came up pregnant. We had tried for a little while, and Benji came up pregnant. Well, not him, but my wife came up pregnant with him. His name's Benji, and when she told me on our anniversary. I remember that was crazy, and it was like nuts, because I was like, wow, this is actually happening, and it was exciting, But obviously, like at the same time, you're just like, oh my gosh, I got to be like responsible now, I have to like come up with all the, grow up all of a sudden. So, we started going, through the motions, whatever, just trying to get in the house set up, this set up, that set up. She's doing her little nesting thing, and y'all call it that. But then all of a sudden, she told me that she wanted to quit her job to take care of him full time. And at first I was like, we can't afford that. I'm sorry. It just, you got to at least have a part-time job or something. But she kind of sat me down and just said, no, you need to figure this out. So I had a lot of pressure on me to do like, okay, what am I going to do? And what really helped me with this as well, Roberto, was the fact that we started looking at the cost of childcare, because you mentioned that a minute ago. She would have basically been working to pay for daycare. That's basically what it would have been. So we're like, why don't we just save the money and then take the time with him?
Yes.
And do that and give him mommy care rather than daycare. And that was, I'm a guy, so at that point it made sense logically. So I was like, let's go ahead and go for it. So now it was my job to replace her income, and that's a tall task, because you just can't really replace 40, 50 or so thousand US per month, not per month, per year, that quickly. So I was like, all right, so what do I do? So I did what most people do. I went to Google and I Googled how to make money online, and you'd be surprised. Like, I mean, gosh, the cesspool that's out there for, ways to make money online. And I tried a whole bunch of them, wasted a lot of time. Unfortunately, wasted a lot of money too. I got scammed a couple of times with stuff that I thought was legit, but wasn't. But I did eventually stumble across blogging and affiliate marketing, mainly the blogging aspect, then using affiliate marketing to monetize. But I loved the business model. I was like, this is awesome, because I can create an asset that just lives, that doesn't require me to stay on it all the time. And it's the same thing with a podcast or a YouTube channel. This podcast right here, you're going to post it and people can listen to it whenever they want, until the end of time, for as long as you keep it hosted, up and running. And that's going to be drawing more people to your brand, more people to this, more people to that. And it does the exact same thing with a blog post. But with a blog post, you can be a little more direct in the sales aspect of it. And because of that, you can monetize a blog post that might only cost you, an hour or two to write, or if you hired a writer to do it, maybe 40 or 50 bucks to write. But you'd be able to make 20 times that, the amount of money per article, than what it costs you to produce it. And that's where, I started really enjoying the business model, and it started taking off. It wasn't easy, don't get me wrong, but I did get to the point to where after about 18 months, I was able to quit my job. And then 2 years later, 2 years into it, I was able to quit mine as well. So that's kind of how we got from A to B with that.
Wow, that's so awesome. I just get so inspired when I hear stories like that. And so is it mainly, so what are you doing nowadays? Because you have a podcast as well.
Yeah. So I did the blogging for a while, started in like 2015.
Yeah.
Didn't take it seriously until late 2016, 2017. Because I tried a few things that didn't necessarily work early on when it comes to blogging. But toward 2017 or so, I decided to actually take it seriously and actually purchase some help, a course and slight mentorship with how to do
Yeah.
it correctly. And just started going through it. It wasn't, I didn't have the money to do it, to be honest. So I just slapped on a credit card. I figured I was also in like a ton of debt too, right? I had over $30,000 worth of bad credit card debt, high interest credit card debt. And I figured, what's another, couple $100 to try to figure this out,
Yeah.
to really to do this. I'm like, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what I was in debt at the time.
Yeah,
So
the bonfire's going, a couple more logs is.
it's not gonna change anything. So I went ahead with it. And man, that was the best investment I probably ever made, because now I had an actual process to follow in order to get this thing working. So anyway, long story short, I went through the whole process. By, let's see, 2017, by like late 2018, I was able to have my wife quit. So our son was about 1.5 or so at that time. And then about 6 months after that, I had the opportunity to quit my job. Um, it was a little longer than I needed because I wasn't so much debt. So I was just paying it off. Like every
Yeah.
time, almost every single dollar that I got, I was putting it on credit cards. I still have, it's funny, I still have the piece of paper over here of all of the credit cards I used to keep track of. And I just kind of leave it there as a reminder to like, don't fall in that hole again. So regardless, I went through the whole process and went to that. I was able to quit after like 2 years. And that's pretty much what, how we went through the whole process in that time period.
Right, I'm going to be using the mute button quite a lot because I don't know if you heard that. Because that's the other thing, right? Zoom on Mac OS, it has features like suppress background noise, like dog barking. So it automatically detects that it's an animal noise and it just cuts it out. I don't need to edit that stuff out anymore. This thing, the Zoom version of the app on the iPad, doesn't do any of that stuff. It's like Zoom Lite. It's crazy. So I'm sorry if you got that real high frequency noise that she makes straight down the pipe through your headphones.
No worries.
And by the way, if you want to go the long way round on any of your stories, you just go right on ahead. You don't need to take the shortcut with me.
Okay.
Or with this audience or this podcast.
I can talk now. I can talk. So please stop me if I got there. But I guess after going through all of the process of learning how to blog and was finally get to the point where I was able to sell, not sell, but yeah, I did sell a blog, but being able to quit my job as well. That's when I decided to start teaching people how to do the same thing. So that's where the podcast genesis kind of came from.
So then that became your niche, basically. So you kind of so what were you initially blogging about? Because now you talk about how to help entrepreneurs to, well, I guess become entrepreneurs and free themselves from the chains of, doing whatever it is that they do as a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But what were you actually doing before you then transitioned into, oh, hang on a second, now I can teach other people this?
So I have two main businesses. So one is just a blogging business. That's the one that handles what are called niche blogs, or you over the pond, across the pond, you call it niche blogs, right? You have niche blogs or whatever. And so a niche blog is basically a blog about a particular topic. It can be anything. It can be candles. It can be golf. It can be automotive, whatever whatever it is, it's just nice and tightly knit in that particular niche. You create content around it and you monetize the audience that you get from Google because of it. So by going through that whole process, you can, find a pretty decent way to make money with the audience that you do get there. So prior to, starting to show people how to do it, I had niche blogs in a number of different niches. I had a coffee blog at one point. I had an essential oils blog at one point. I had a blog that talked about scams. One thing that I went through the whole process of learning how to do this kind of stuff was I got scammed a lot. So I created a blog that talked about scams to avoid. And was able to
learning and passing it forward, you're right, with your own experience.
Yeah, pretty much. And what I've noticed through all of the whole process is that these what are called hobby blogs do a lot better. So it's better to just find a nice, tightly wound topic to talk about and just talk about that on your blog. So I had a couple of blogs that I was able to grow up and get them to some pretty decent income and and traffic, and then I sold them. And that's really where the website investing part comes into this, because I didn't even know this part of the business existed until probably like a year or so into blogging. But since these websites can buy and sell our businesses, and they make money, like they're generating assets, you can buy and sell them like any other business, and at some pretty ridiculous multiples, in terms of how much it makes per month versus what you can actually sell it for. And when I stumbled across that part of the business, I was like, wow, this is not just something that I could make, a couple of grand a month with and just be okay with. We're talking about 6-figure exits that you can do with these sites once you get them to a certain point. And, you can get some life-changing money literally overnight. And that's when I really started, doubling down on the whole blogging thing.
And what have you seen? So when so let's take your coffee blog, for example. Did you sell that one?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you go back to it since to see what they're doing with it? Like just out of more curiosity?
Ironically, I think I sold that in 2019 or so, late 2018. And ironically, it's not there anymore.
Oh.
So I don't know what the guy did with it. But it doesn't exist anymore. I go to it, the domain is actually, I probably could buy the domain again. But it's not even.
Don't say the domain out loud.
I know. Yeah, I gotta.
I think you might need to circle back round on that idea.
I haven't checked it in a couple of years, to be honest, because I haven't even thought about it.
Have you checked on any, have some of the ones that you've sold, have they kind of taken them and carried them on and developed them?
Oh yeah.
Because I'm just trying to work out what they would use them for.
Okay, so let me break that down for you then. So these blogs are revenue generating assets, right? And you build them up so that they can continue generating that revenue. So you get traffic from Google by creating targeted search engine optimized content, or SEO content, so that it can be found on Google. Once you are creating content that's being found on Google, then people's going to find your blog. And then because you have that particular group of people on your blog, you can monetize them by promoting products that they would be interested in. So just for the sake of example, so that we're not talking all generalities here, I currently have a golf blog, right, that talks about golf and playing golf. So I can write an article that's like how to fix your golf slice, right? So when I write that article, then when people Google how to fix your golf slice, then hopefully my blog pops up. And when it pops up, then people are on my website trying to fix their slice. Because I know that they're interested in golf and they're trying to fix their slice, I can probably try to promote a digital program or maybe a specialty type club that will help you fix your slice. Click here to go buy it, or something like that. I would still help them in the blog post. I'm not just immediately saying click here to go buy. I give them some good actionable tips on how they can fix their slice. And then I'll say, here's one thing that I use to help me with my slice. You might want to go check it out. Here's a link to go click it and go check it out. And then if they click that link and go buy something, then I get a commission for that sale. And depending on how much money it is, I can get anywhere from 5% to 20% per sale. And like I have one thing that I promote, it's like $300. And if they buy it, then I'm going to get like around 15 to 20% of that sale just from making the recommendation. And that's what affiliate marketing happens to be. So because of that whole process, right, you can do that over and over again as many people are coming to your site. And it's very, very consistent, like really consistent, because of the traffic that Google can send to you. So because of that, people can buy these revenue generating assets if they need somewhere to stash some money themselves, right? So a blog that makes $1,000 a month consistently over 3 to 6 months or so can be sold for around $30,000 to $40,000. So if you have $30,000 or $40,000 just kind of sitting somewhere, and maybe you don't want to put it in the stock market, or you don't want to put it in the index fund, you can buy a website. And when you buy that website, now you have an asset that literally the next day is generating you revenue, because you just have to change over the monetization and everything onto the site. You don't have to wait, and wait for your money to come back. So that's what people are doing. They're taking, these large amounts of money. They're buying these assets because they make money almost immediately the second that you get them, and you start immediately getting a return on your investment. So you have to look at it from a investing point of view versus like, oh my gosh, you spent 50 grand on a blog. You're like, no, I mean, I've spent 50 grand on an asset that hopefully in the next year it's going to make me 100 grand. That's what the whole point of it is.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible, because that's like investing in a business that's already kind of running, generating income and so on. You've already got, the staff working, the whole machine is moving. You just need to basically keep putting the oil in, because if you buy the website, either you or you might need to hire someone to continue to create the content, because you've got to keep that audience there and maybe continue to grow it. Wow, that's it. I never knew that this world existed.
Yeah, it's a decent world. I'll be honest.
Have you ever seen on Disney Plus, right, on the National Geographic section, the series "The World According to Jeff Goldblum"?
Oh, I've heard of it and I've seen it, but I've never actually sat down and watched it.
You've just given me a Jeff Goldblum moment, because I never knew this. So you'd be fascinated. You'd love this show. It's one of my favorite factual shows, documentary type shows, ever. And basically, it's like the very first episode, I think he delves into sneaker culture, because there's this billions of dollars worth of industry of people who trade in sneakers, and there's these big fairs and people go and buy these limited editions, and they've got rolls of cash, and they'll invest in a certain limited edition sneaker that's coming out, and then they'll trade it on. I obviously have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's what he does. He just delves into these things, and it's absolutely fascinating. He did one on coffee, one on denim, one on road cycling as well. Absolutely fascinating. The universe needs to connect you with him so that you can show Jeff Goldblum this kind of world of, oh man, that's so cool. So, God, this is really exciting. I'm gonna sign up to your bloggerrevolution.com site.
Oh yeah, bloggerevolution.com. Be sure to check it out.
Exactly. I've just given the call to action away at the wrong point of the episode. But anyway, you guys, if you're watching this and your hands are kind of feeling a bit fiddly, then go to bloggerrevolution.com. Check it out.
Blogger Evolution. I gotta fix that. Well, bloggerevolution.com. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Blogger. It looks like blog. Oh yeah, Blog Revolution.
Yeah, I was thinking about buying the domain name Blogger Revolution just so that I can get both sides, but it is Blogger Evolution.
Yeah, why not?
I gotta figure that part out.
It doesn't matter which way people misspell it. If you've got both domains, they'll end up in the same place. So
exactly, I'll just redirect it to one side, and I'll go to the same place.
Okay, so make sure you go do that. You've got maybe 2 to 3 weeks before this episode goes out, and anyone catches all the secrets that we're giving away.
Someone's gonna buy Blogger Revolution, and then I'm gonna be stuck.
No, exactly. I might buy it actually. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Brother, I wouldn't do that to you. But yeah,
somebody will. Trust me.
But go do that. Once you've done it, then let me know. Then I'll release the episode. Okay.
All right, cool. Go for it.
So here's the other thing I want to ask you. So you have a young family.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the other thing I want to ask you, and Siri, with no prompting whatsoever, was like, "Hey, what do you want to ask me?" Like, no, go. I didn't even say your name. It's crazy.
I know.
Chris Myles. So here's the next thing I want to ask you. I started my podcast 18 months ago, where 80 published episodes in, I've obviously got a lot more in the pipe that need to be edited and go out. It takes a lot of time away from my wife and from our furry children, our 2 cats and dogs. And sometimes I've even had to forego doing things like going to the cinema, the movie theater. And I'm very, very conscious of that. I mean, I've managed to do things like cut my editing time down, but then my blog is suffering because I'm not able to give that as much attention. How on earth do you find time to create all this content on multiple sites, etc., when you have presumably, especially because your 6-year-old now is at an age where at school,
mm-hmm.
You must have one of those calendars on the fridge which has all of his activities on, and
we do, yeah.
Your other job is Uber driver, taking him around to everything. How the hell do you balance all of that and juggle all of it and find time to kind of keep creating the content?
Yeah. So the one thing is, I mean, I do this full time, right? So, I wake up in the morning and I work on it, and that's pretty
Oh
much
yeah.
it. So, that is a difference. When I first got started with it, I was working a 9 to 5, but a 9 to 5 isn't really a 9 to 5. It was, I think I was working anywhere from, 10, 12, 15 hours a day sometimes. So what I would do is, probably wake up an hour early and work on stuff, maybe stay up an hour later and work on stuff. He was still an infant at the time when I first got started, so I was still doing a lot of learning. So if he was like, up at night and he couldn't sleep or whatever, and I was just holding him or something, I had a podcast going in the background. I was watching something on YouTube trying to learn how to get better at the business. I was even blogging at that time, just trying to punch out as many blog articles as I possibly could, because I understood the idea that one saying I used to say is a blog post a day keeps the employer away, and that's kind of what I was trying to
Oh,
do all
nice
over and
one.
over
I
again.
like that.
So, yeah, I mean, when I first quit my job, I'll be honest, it was tough because I didn't know how to manage time very well. When you run your own business, you have to be the CEO of your business. You got to figure out what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And the whole thing stops with you. So it took a little bit, that first, I don't know, 4 to 5 months, I probably did next to nothing at all because I was just kind of just riding on everything that I built up until that point. But the weird thing about, not really the weird thing, but the predictable thing about when we create content is that, like you mentioned, if you stop working on it, it doesn't like die immediately, but it does wane over time. So I had to figure out ways to kind of be in more than one place at once, right? And I was able to get some virtual assistants, and I have writers who write articles for me. Like I run like 5 or 6 sites, so there's no way I can write content for all of those sites. Even then, and with the VA and the writers that I do have, I really only concentrate on like 2 sites, because now I could scale that more by hiring, an editor and hiring more writers. And there's other people in my industry that do this ridiculous, have huge 40, 50 member teams
Yeah.
of to make sure that they keep their, 20, 30 blogs running. And I could do that, but I like my time more. So what I try to do is just, I have a process that I've put in place, some standard operating procedures, if you will. And I do the keyword research, meaning I pick the topics to write on. I pass them on to my writers. They take care of it. I pay them to write it. They send me the articles back, and either me or the VA will look at them, post them onto the site, and then move on to the next one. And because of that time that I'm saving from having to write, I can do other stuff like, maybe other stuff toward the business, be on podcasts like this, hang out with the family, whatever I feel like doing with that time. So I'm buying back my time. It's the whole, 4-hour work week type thing. I do a little bit of, but it's not that true. It's not 4 hours. But I mean, there are times where, I mean, I could do that for a month, if I didn't feel like working too much on it, and just take the month off if I felt like, which it really is helpful.
Yeah. And so liberating as well, right?
Yes, for sure.
What was it like the day that you quit your job? Like when you handed in your resignation letter and you're like, listen, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a cool story. So I was supposed to go on a trip, and I put in my vacation time so I can get my, I don't know, it may have been like 6 or 7 days or so. So I put in a vacation time and it was approved. It's like, beautiful. This has worked out. So when I got the approval, went ahead and bought the plane tickets, got the hotel, did all of that fun stuff. Literally like, and this was probably a month or two prior. Um, Literally like maybe 2 weeks before, uh, get a message from my boss. He's like, "Hey, we got to cancel your vacation because we're doing like a go live or something they called it." And I was the only tech in my area, so I couldn't do, if it had, I had to do it basically.
Yeah.
But I told him, I was like, "Hey, I mean, you already approved a vacation, and if I don't go, then I'm going to end up, losing out on a lot of money." And I mean, he didn't say it per se, but I kind of felt as though if I didn't do it, I would have lost more money because I wouldn't have had a job. So I didn't like how that happened, right? I didn't like being backed into a corner like that by my employer. And here's the fun part about this whole process. During this time, my blogging business was blowing up. I was actually making more money with my side hustle than I was working that 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So when this happened, I had options. I had options. So I basically told him, I was like, no, I can't do that. No, I'm gonna go on this trip. All of a sudden, like the power shifted.
Yeah,
you know, and
totally.
they didn't threaten me or anything. They didn't seem like it, but it was kind of implied. So I basically, at that point, I waited about a few days. I talked to my wife about it, and I was like, you know what? Worst case scenario, we give it a try for a year, see what happens. Quitting the job.
Yeah.
So we went ahead, handed in my resignation. His jaw dropped. He could not believe that I was actually going to quit instead of, doing whatever that they wanted me to do. If this whole process didn't happen, I might have stayed with them a little bit longer. But because of that whole process, what? Let's just go ahead and give it a shot. Let's just see what
Yeah.
happens. That was 4 years ago now. And so we're still doing okay. We've had some tough times, but I rather be able to choose what I do and when I work versus being stuck in a single location because I have to be somewhere, in a cubicle for 8-10 hours a day. So
Yeah.
I mean, worst case scenario is, at the time I was thinking we just get another job, if that's the case. We still have marketable skills. I've been able to learn search engine optimization and SEO. So because of that, if I ever needed to really get, a traditional job again, which I would cry the day that happens, but if I needed to, I could get a job just doing more SEO stuff for a company, probably more doing a freelance type gig or a contract type gig rather than actually working for them, 100%. But regardless, I've developed a marketable skill. I can build and develop websites, and I can use that for somebody else and make money from it. I just choose to do that for myself right now,
Yeah.
and that's what's going on.
Exactly. For some reason, while you were talking about that, I thought immediately of Killmonger's quote at the end of Black Panther, but I'm not going to give the quote here because it's kind of quite deep. But you know the quote. I mean,
Yeah, then
better
to
to
man, then
die free
better
than
to die than yeah. Gotcha. Yeah,
Oh,
Wakanda
Chadwick.
forever.
I did you see Black Panther 2?
Yes,
I didn't think it was good as the first one, but the first film was pretty
considering
special. But I still cried
considering
considering
yeah,
they did an amazing job though.
yeah. I did like. I don't know if it's spoiler alert. I won't get into it, but I like what they did with the post credit scene. I
Yeah,
just hope that they follow up on it the right way.
yeah,
And if they
exactly.
do, then it'll fix a lot of stuff. Because I did kind of have an issue with them not recasting T'Challa. I wanted them to recast him because they recast everybody else, right? They recast um James Bond, every 5 minutes, it seems like. They recast all these other guys. Why not recast T'Challa? Because as great of a guy as Chadwick Boseman is, the character of T'Challa meant a lot to a lot of people,
Oh yeah,
and I didn't want them to kill off the character.
yeah,
So it's nice that of what they did in that last scene. Um, he might be part. I don't want to get into it because that might spoil it. But yeah, I'm hoping that they just follow up on it.
yeah. No, totally. Um, I'm just winding up thinking. That whole thing with Chadwick Boseman hit me quite hard. I mean, I think it hit a lot of us quite hard, but me particularly for me, because he and I were the same age.
Mm,
I don't even want to talk about him in the past tense, but anyway, I knew something was up when I saw was it 21 Bridges? I never know how many bridges there
yeah,
are in Manhattan, but yeah, that movie, I turned around to Carolina and I said, there's something up with him, that he hasn't
oh yeah,
lost
you
that
could
weight for
tell.
the role. There's something going on. But
Yeah, I mean, he always loved doing like iconic roles too,
yeah.
right? Because he did James Brown and he did uh, uh shoot, I can't remember the baseball player, 21,
Yes.
and he, yeah, it's not like he didn't just take random roles. He took roles that he saw was like, okay, this is going to be groundbreaking. Did you ever hear the story that like Denzel Washington paid for his schooling and he didn't even realize
Yeah.
it at the time?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just paying it
Mind
forward, man.
blowing.
Yeah, exactly. And It's a sad situation, but I think they did handle it as best as they could in Black Panther 2. Um, considering while still remaining respectful to the character. I was worried that maybe they would, exploit his death, but they didn't. They I think they did a good job at handling it on screen. And then I mean I think Shuri stepped up, to be honest. It was entertaining. Like I said, it wasn't as good as the first one, but it was entertaining and good to see.
Yeah, totally. Sorry, it took quite a sad turn there. I didn't mean to. Something else I want to ask you before I let you go is this whole. You mentioned SEO.
Yeah.
I mean, my junk email is full of so many people like, "Hey, I've just been on your website, and Roberto, what you've done with RobertoRevillaLondon.com is great, but you're not ranking in Google and blah blah blah." And I'm just thinking, like, seriously, go away, please. And we've worked with web agencies who would then give a bit of SEO consultancy and so on, and we kind of stopped all of that in the end. We moved the site to Squarespace and the blog obviously as a result to Squarespace as well. And the way that people were asking me to write articles, and I know a lot of other creators get this same problem, is they want you to mention as many keywords in the articles as possible. And if you keep doing that, it doesn't read very well at all. So then it's kind of like, you go back to your principles. Who are you creating the content for? Are you creating the content primarily as a fishing net to basically try and build an audience and then sell them stuff? Or is your primary intention to serve? Now, me personally, my primary intention is to give value and to serve people. And if eventually somewhere down the line, the monetization thing becomes an opportunity, then fantastic. Although I'm kind of sort of slightly, my thinking has been impacted by some of the things that you've shared today. So anyway, but what do you say to that? I mean, is it better to go with the intention of value and actually create articles that are written naturally rather than trying to I don't know if things have changed nowadays with SEO and so on, and if it's what the universe is looking for is different to what it did 10-12 years ago.
Yeah, no, SEO has changed a lot, over time. It seems to change every day sometimes, but it's still at its core is essentially the same thing, and that is to provide value to people as quickly as possible. All right. So whatever it is that they're looking for, whatever it is, what's called their search intent happens to be. And when I say search intent, I mean, when they Google a phrase, what really at the core are they looking for? So if I say something like, how tall is, I don't know, Michael Jordan or something, right? Mm-hmm. Someone might say, what's Michael Jordan's height? Or how tall is Michael Jordan? Or how tall is Michael Jordan compared to Kobe Bryant or something like that, right? Essentially, you want to know how tall Michael Jordan is. That's what the search intent is. No matter how you phrase it, that's what you want to know. So how quickly can you provide that answer? And that's really what the idea of it is if you can create an answer that satisfies and is correct, that's going to cause people to use Google over and over again. Because if you give it to me fast and you give it to me correct, then I'm going to use Google more often. And the more often I use Google, the more opportunity there is for me to see an advertisement that's on Google's website. And the more advertisements I see, the more money Google makes. So that's their direct way of monetization, that they monetize people. Anytime something is free, you're the product. Always remember that. So, regardless, but because of that, we can use that same idea and information for when we create content. So using again the example earlier about how to fix your golf slice, right? If I can give a nice succinct answer pretty quickly, I'm going to have an option or the opportunity of being able to rank, for that term. But then I also have the opportunity to try to sell them something else, right? And that's really what the whole idea of it is. So nowadays, it's the same difference. Can you create content that is helpful and that satisfies the search intent? So while you were talking, Roberto, I actually brought up your website just to take a quick look at it. And I can see that you have a good what's called authority on the site. You have some what are called backlinks, or people who are linking to your website that are also highly authoritative. Meaning that they seem to know what they're talking about too, and are linking to your site. So you actually have some pretty good authority on your site. The only thing that I'm noticing is that your content is all over the place. One thing that I talk about is, if you create a golf site, you create content on golf. If you create a coffee site, you create content on coffee. It would look weird if I created content on golf on a coffee site, right?
Yeah.
I use this as an example as well. I like the show. I like to watch what is it? The Food Network, right? Because I like Chopped, right? I like to watch Chopped and watch all of that fun stuff. It's cool. But if I'm watching Chopped and I sit down and I'm ready to go, and my wife likes it too, so we'll sit down and watch it, and watching these people cook, and then all of a sudden, let's just say a politician drops in, and now he's telling me about his idea on taxes or something. That's gonna be kind of weird, right? Because I didn't tune to the Food Network to talk about politics. I tune the Food Network to talk about food, right? So that's how jarring it is when you do it online as well. So if you're creating content and you're talking about one subject, and then you talk about another subject, and you talk about another subject, you're not talking about anything. There's an old marketing phrase that says, if you try to talk to everybody, you end up talking to nobody. You need to, the riches are in the niches. So you need to be a little bit more specific with who it is you talk to. And by doing that, you give Google a clear indication of what your website is about, which helps them present it to the right person.
Yeah. So, because, for example, if we use me as an example, which I'm happy to do, and I'm really glad that you actually did that. I was cringing, and that's why I had my hands over my face as well, because I was like, oh my God, who's going to tell me it's a complete disaster? But 1 out of 2 is not bad. So what I did the other day, literally a couple nights ago, I went on Answer the Public, and I basically just put, obviously search queries or whatever keywords in related to what I actually do and what the website is meant to be about, which is menswear. Suits, business casual is a big topic at the moment because dressing for work, with work from home and hybrid working and all of this, it's just become more complex than it's ever been in modern human history. And I now have, those wheels they produce with all of the questions and the stuff. So I've now got at least, I think, about 8 of those circles now that I've now saved and PDF'd. And, each circle has got somewhere around, I would probably say, 12 to 24 useful questions that could form the basis of a blog post. So I'm just now starting to do some preparation, where before it was basically, I feel like I need to do a blog post. I haven't done one for a while. What shall I talk about? And now you're smiling because you can see how that has come to be. Now what I'm doing is I'm not going to sit down and write for the next 2 weeks, but what I'm going to do for the next 2 weeks is I'm going to create a content plan. Yeah. And then I'm going to diarize, right, okay, today I've got half an hour blocked out and I'm going to be talking about business smart casual. And then the next day I'm going to be talking about, the style of suits that are in fashion right now. And then I'll pleats back and forth, whatever. And make sure that what I'm actually writing, because it's planned out, it's all niched and related to exactly what I'm doing, so that we stop this kind of wandering around talking about, iPhones 1 minute and then talking about clothing the next. Because I can see, the example you gave with the Food Network is, it's exactly that. I can completely see that, and hopefully that's helped a lot of people who are listening right now.
Well, let me throw this into you as well. So let's just say you were on the Food Network and a politician shows up. Now, what if this politician has an awesome cake recipe, right? Ooh. And he shares it with you. And then so now we're on brand, right? We're talking about the right thing. And then maybe after he shared me his awesome cookie recipe or whatever it happens to be, and he makes it on TV with right there, maybe then he can be like, hey, why don't you go, check me out here, check me out there, yada, yada. All of a sudden that works. So all you need to do at that point is, if you're doing, I see you have a review on the Apple AirPods Max reviewed, right? Those headphones. If you tied it to fashion, then it would work.
Oh, yeah. Like, I never use those things. I never use those things when I'm walking out and about in a three-piece suit, because the two don't go together. So where I wear those is when I'm out and about wearing a Yankees baseball cap, and then I have the things over. I'm sorry if that's a team that you don't support or hate or whatever, you know, because we have soccer, football over here, and the rivalries between teams are so intense. And I seem to remember, like, is it the Mets and the Yankees are the two kind of New York teams?
The New York baseball teams, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
You're either a Mets fan or a Yankees fan. I'm a Yankees fan, but
yeah, I was seeing a girl in New York once, and her whole family were Mets fans, and so she made me sit in front of the television and just watch a whole load of baseball. And I concluded, like, after the second game that I watched, I just turned around to, like, her dad and I said, "They're really bad. Like, this team's terrible. I'm going to support the Yankees. Like, Jay-Z and people like that seem to support them. They seem pretty cool. But the Mets,
they won a lot. Yeah, they won a lot. That's why.
But the Mets just look like they're really awful at baseball. Why would I support them?" Anyway, sorry. So what were we talking?
SEO and talking about that. So I see, like, we have one article that's are pleated trousers in style? That's a good question. You know, and I think that's a good article that's on brand for what you're trying to do. But then 6 tips to combat Zoom fatigue. That's not really on brand for you, right? So that'd be an article that maybe I wouldn't include. You jumped into some wedding stuff. I think that would be on brand for the most part. There might be simple questions like, what colors can I wear to a wedding? Or, what type of styles are good for guys at weddings or whatever, and you can talk about that kind of thing. And at that point, the next thing is to try to figure out if you have a shot at ranking for it, but also making the content readable for a human and not for a computer. You mentioned putting keywords here and there. You don't want to get it to where it just sounds bad. It needs to be helpful to a person. If you realize that the algorithm that Google uses pretty much follows the audience or the people. So if you write for the people, you're going to naturally follow with the audience.
I get it, because so many people think that the way that they're writing, they need to write for Google, not the audience, because they're trying to catch whatever the RoboCop AI thing that is Google. They think it's this entity that is just, kind of just watching everything that you're clicking into your keyboard, and that you've got to kind of hit those right kind of, numbers or letters or whatever. And then all of a sudden Google will take your content and start showing it to people. That's quite a paradigm shift. And I think this was the fight that I was having with the web agency that we used to have, because, we would have these meetings every month and they'll be like, okay, yeah, we're going to do this on this page and this on this page. Now let's talk about the magazine. And I just feel like, I don't want to effing talk about the magazine, okay? Because I know what you guys are going to tell me. You're going to give me a bunch of article headings and you're going to give me a list of 20, 30 key phrases that I need to insert into my article. And I don't talk like that. I don't write like that. Like, I think, I know I'm a good writer. And they were trying to get me to write like an android.
Yeah. And that's the line you have to kind of walk, because there is, Google is a computer, it's a search engine. It's not a human that can sit down and read for comprehension, right? It can do its best guess, based on the words that we put in an article. So, for example, okay, here's a probably pretty good example. We were talking about The Office early on, right? Mm-hmm. So let's just say you're writing an article about The Office. How would Google know that you're talking about UK Office versus the US Office?
Yeah.
It would be based on other words that you would use within that article, right? So if you use words like UK, Ricky Gervais, some other actors and actresses who were on that show, then that would give Google the idea, okay, this is talking about The Office UK. So I can present that to people who are looking for specific Office UK type stuff. But then if you mention other stuff like Steve Carell, John Krasinski, all of those names, then it would know that you're talking about the U.S. Office. So it does matter what kind of words you use within the article itself so that Google can more easily classify it.
Yeah, I get that.
but you have to do it naturally. So
Yeah.
there's a thing that's called on-page SEO and off-page SEO. For on-page stuff, all you really have to do is have your main keyword, whatever it is you're targeting, put it in the title, put it in the URL itself. So the actual website name, make sure you put it in that, and then use it in the first 100 words of your article, and then naturally throughout the rest of the article. If you do that, you've done about 60% of SEO right there. That's because at that point you're just kind of giving Google the ball and letting them run with it.
Yeah.
So that's all you really have to do at that point when it comes to on-page SEO.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just conscious of time for you.
Yeah, I do have a hard stop.
Yeah. No. But honestly, thank you so much. And again, so many of the guests that I've had recently, and you are another one to add to the roster of just awesome people. There's going to be so much content we're going to spin out of this episode, co-authored articles and so on. So everyone's going to be seeing a lot more of Chris, not just on the YouTube channel, but on LinkedIn as well, but not on my website because it's not wholly relevant to my niche. Okay,
you need another branded website that talks about just the podcast.
Yeah, but so this is the other thing you've got me thinking about as well, Chris. It's just when I thought I was trying to narrow my business life down, I'm now looking at ways to expand my little empire. No, thank you. So lastly, I've got to ask you, however many Marvel movies we are in now, I've lost count of how many it is. Are you still really excited and looking forward to what's coming in phase 5, or are you starting to get a little bit of fatigue?
No fatigue at all. I am a Marvel fan through and through. Like, seriously, like I am super. I was talking to my wife last night when the Ant-Man trailer dropped, and like I was super excited about what's happening, seeing Jonathan Majors and everything, and him being the big bad for phase 5. I told my wife, I was like, hey, so I'm gonna go see this movie the day it comes out. Are you coming with me? That was basically the question. And she was like, I don't know if I want to go the day of. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm either gonna go by myself or get my brother-in-law. But no, I mean, I'm buying tickets the day that it's available, ready to go, because there's a lot of stuff I follow on YouTube that I can't watch YouTube unless I've seen the movie. Otherwise I'm gonna get spoiled. So I have to like stay on making sure that it's there. But to be honest, I mean, Wakanda Forever was it had a decent lead up to it, but it was kind of bittersweet, obviously. I haven't felt this kind of excitement for a movie probably since maybe Endgame, because I think Quantumania is gonna just break it's gonna break everything. And I think they have to set up Jonathan Major's character as Kang to be bigger than Thanos, right? He has to be more intimidating than him. So it's like the expectation is, how are they going to build that up? As to making him seem like he's just make Thanos look like he was just a cartoon character, and that's what I'm waiting to see how they build that out.
So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Marvel fan. Growing up, Spider-Man was like my favorite Marvel superhero because he had a mask, so it meant that any of us could be him. Because at the end of the day, I'll say it's my podcast. Most superheroes like Superman and so on, they're all white, so you couldn't really relate to that. That's why
we got Miles Morales.
Exactly, we have now, which for kids is just awesome. And on the DC side, though, I did love Superman and Batman. I was absolutely in love with because of just that dark side to him as well.
But yeah, I've been able to put it together.
I co-host another podcast called Play Pause Turn, which is, as the name suggests, is about what we gaming and pop culture and all that sort of stuff and movies that we watch. But I was saying to the guys, because they were in our Discord talking about Quantumania, and which is Ant-Man 3 for anyone that's listening and is now confused because we've completely gone off topic. But and I was like, I don't know, I don't know if this is just getting a bit too much. I can't keep up because now we've got the Disney Plus shows and all the rest of it. And before I came on with you, because I had a few minutes while I was making a cup of tea. Yes, Very British, I know, and it's very cliche, but it's what we do.
I have iced coffee here. It's probably very American for sure.
So as I was having my tea before coming on to talk to you, I thought, do you know what? Let me just watch the trailer. Oh my God.
Yeah,
February 17th.
It's epic.
Like, I'm there. I'm in the movie theater. I need to know what happens. Like, it's, all bets are off.
It's going to pick up. I thought Loki was probably the best of the Disney Plus shows. I'm a time travel nerd anyway. Like you mentioned Back to the Future. That's the reason why I like those shows. I love diving into time travel. So the whole Loki thing was huge for me, and it's feel like it's going to build up on that as well. And man, you mentioned Spider-Man. Yeah, since No Way Home, again, it's probably one of the most. I think it's going to be a very hyped up movie, even though it's Ant-Man, right? Like Ant-Man's kind of like the side character kind of guy, but the fact that you have Kang in this one, and he's basically establishing himself as the big bad of Phase 5. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
I know. I thought I really loved the first Ant-Man movie because it was small, it was short, it was self-contained, it was funny.
It was very good.
The casting was absolutely brilliant as well. I mean, everyone that was cast was just perfect in their roles, and but I mean, I hope they don't lose, much of the fun element of Ant-Man.
The last trailer was kind of dark.
Very.
The last trailer was kind of dark, right? There wasn't a lot of light, which really what
I'm wondering
Paul Rudd is.
I'm wondering if they're going to kill Paul Rudd off in this, but
might.
Anyway,
I'm throwing my. I mean, this isn't a spoiler because we don't know because the movie isn't out yet. But I think they're going to get rid of Hank Pym. Like, I think someone big is going to die. I just don't know who.
For sure.
Yeah.
Everybody listening, if you want to connect, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so Blogger Evolution Podcast. Be sure to go check that out. Subscribe, please. If you listen to a few episodes and you find any value in it, please leave me a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts as well. Or you can find me at bloggerevolution.com, and you can connect with me there. If you want help with your SEO or anything like that, I have some free trainings and stuff you can check out over there as well. And looking forward to chatting with you.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'll have all of that in the show notes. Chris, have you had fun?
Oh, this is great. It was nice just to kind of have like a little fireside chat, about just randomness, but, it's, what we do, creating content. I'm hoping everyone got some value out of it, and hopefully, do some stuff to change your life with it, because that's what I've been able to do with blogging and affiliate marketing. And I really think anyone can do it if they put their minds to it.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you all for joining Chris and I on this episode. Don't forget, Tailoring Talk is on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. I love feedback. Email me at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review, and click the share button in your player to send this episode to someone who might get some help or be inspired by Chris today. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and want to support the show, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Revilla. Have a great week. Be good to each other, and I'll see you on the next one.